today, out of their own time, energy, resources, they've put this on for us to find our assignment. So I just want to honour them and say thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. And if you're new to KI or Kingdom Investors, I know many of you know me and you know Kingdom Investors, but just to give you a 2-second overview of KI, the objective of KI is basically to activate the Christian men and women in the marketplace. So we want to equip you to build influence and affluence to bring God's culture into the world. That's essentially our mandate. And at the moment, we are being inundated from requests around the world. And the reason for that is the teaching we give here today and we hear on the website is you traditionally will not hear that in the church. At the moment we have, Dave Hodgson couldn't make it today because of the crazy stuff that's happening around the world. He's going to be on video, so I've brought him in video, which is just as good. But we, as crazy, South America, Mexico, Lebanon, Indonesia, America, all these nations wanting this teaching. It's now gone out to about 70 million people now, the teachings of KI, and being translated into multiple languages. So the demand is there, and the demand is there not because Dave or I are, a Superman or anything like that. The demand is there because of the teaching. Okay, people are gravitating to the teaching because it's about activating the men and women in the marketplace to go out there and bring back what the enemy's tried to steal. So that's why. I just also want to quickly introduce my wife, Simone. Simone and I have been married for 22 years. Yeah, I think that's a good effort. She's up the back in the pink there, and so she'll be sharing her testimony later today as well, but she's a great support to me. We teach around the world together, and we're going to be doing more of this together for KI into the future. So for those of you who have heard about my wife before that attend KI on the Gold Coast, she is the woman that when I asked her what type of movie actor I would be, I said, if I was a movie actor, a character of a movie actor, who would I be? And most men, right, want to say, hey, I want to hear something back like I'm a Brad Pitt or I'm The Rock or something like that. She came back and she sort of looked at me strangely and said, I liken you to Mr. Bean. That's true. It's a true story. So, we're pretty much in full-time counselling after that. No, we can't take ourselves too seriously, can we? So I want to start today. I know there's many different people in the room. Some of you are in business, some of you are in ministry, maybe some in leadership, maybe some of you are between jobs, maybe you don't have a job. No matter what your background is, where you come from, I believe today could be a strategic day. Well, Simone and I have been praying on the way down that today is a strategic day for you on earth, for what God has for you. And I believe many of you today are going to discover your assignment, and it's exciting. For myself and many others, when you discover your assignment, something happens in your life. And the fulfillment, the peace, the joy you have when you get up every morning and you're in your assignment is awesome. It doesn't mean that you don't get attacked. It doesn't mean you go, you have smooth times. You get attacked, you go through persecution, all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, there's a fulfillment and there's a peace when you're walking out your calling, your assignment. So I'm going to share with you a bit of my testimony as we go through today, but I wanted to start with this picture here, and I have shared this before at KI on the Gold Coast, but it probably sums up what I want to communicate up front. This is actually a picture of Jews being taken off on the train to their ultimate death, all right? Many, many years ago, as you all would know. And there's a story of a church that backed onto the railway line. And every Sunday, as the Jews were taken away, the church would actually turn up the music and sing louder to drown out the noise of the Jews screaming as they're taken to their death. I thought that was crazy when I heard that. I thought that is absolutely nuts. I mean, imagine us being in this room here, turning up the music and singing louder as a train goes by and people are ultimately going to their death. And as I heard the story, it just stuck in my mind, and I thought to myself, if I was in that church, X number of years ago, I haven't worked out how many years ago it was, what would I do? Would I be someone that turns up the music and sings louder, or would I actually stand up in front of that adversity and that opposition and actually do something? And I wondered what my response would be. I mean, I was appalled by it and I was disgusted by it, but then God challenged me and thought, would you actually stand up amongst all that? You know, we can look back on that in retrospect now and go, well, if I was there, I would have stood up. You know, they should have done something, right? And it's easy to look at it in that way. But as I was thinking about that, we have gone through crazy times in Australia and around the world over the last few years. Would you agree? I mean, look at how Christianity has been attacked in our nation. You know, with everything, the political parties, you know, everywhere, education, every mountain has been attacked. And I wonder what our children's children will read in the year 2019 say. And they'll look back to this time, in 3019, they'll look back to 2019. I wonder what they'll be reading in their history books. Will they be reading that we as a generation turned up the music and sang louder? Whilst there's all this chaos going around us, you know, social, economic distress, you know, Christianity being overtly attacked, and they saying to their friends, what were they doing back in 2019? Why didn't they stand up and do something? Why didn't they enter into these different realms of society and make a difference? I wonder if that's what they'll read, because they could read, oh, it was crazy. You had slavery, you had poverty, you had domestic violence, you had political parties doing full-term abortions. Why didn't they do something? Is that what they will read? Or will they read something different? Will they read the generation of 2019 actually stood up, took the mantle that God had for their life and went out into the world and made a difference? I believe the latter. I believe we are in a strategic time in history where God is saying to us, it's time for us to rise up. And he's calling the faceless and the unknowns. He's not just calling the guys that you see on the charismatic magazines, he's calling each one of us in this room to stand up. Because I believe he's saying there's a new season, there's a new day, there's a new hour. And it's time for us to take what God has for us on planet Earth and execute it. Because I believe as we execute our assignment, all right, in the world, we're going to take back the territory that the enemy has stolen from us. And I believe the Lord is saying today is a start for many of you here. And that's exciting. You know, when I look back to my life, I'm making out I'm 100. Look back on my life, I'm still very young, I'm 25. What are you laughing at? I've just aged really badly. I was in this cycle of what I call generic Christianity, all right? And it looks a bit like this. You know, little family, car, go to church on the weekend, have some social get-togethers, and sit under a palm tree. But as I was doing all this, it would repeat itself every week. Church on Sunday, to-do list, responsibilities throughout the week. And I thought that was Christianity. I thought that's what it was all about. Buying a nice house, a good car, you know, paying the mortgage off, and then enjoying the twilight years of golf and bingo. There's nothing wrong with bingo, by the way. Bingo's an awesome game. But God started to speak to me. He said, do you really think this is what it's all about? And I started to read the Bible, and I was living, I believe, countercultural to what the scriptures say. Okay, when you look through the scriptures, you see something very different. And at that time, I started to think, I'm just lukewarm, I'm apathetic, I'm not living out the calling for my life. I didn't have a peace, I didn't have a fulfillment. I just thought, what am I doing? This is just generic Christianity. And I'd flip open the Bible and I would see these men and women so dedicated to the kingdom that they would sacrifice their lives for Jesus Christ. And my life looked nothing like that. If you put my life into the book of Acts, say, You wouldn't read through the book of Acts and you come to Stephen, who's lifting his arms up in the air and he's getting stoned and he's looking up to heaven saying, stone me, I don't care, I've got Jesus. And then you flip the page and it says, yes, there was a guy called David, known as Mr. Bean. And he went to church every Sunday and he sang a song and he went home and he did a few things during the week. You wouldn't read that and go home to your friends and go, man, I'm reading about this guy called David, it's awesome. He goes to church on Sunday and he sings a song and he goes home during the week and that's his life, would you? You wouldn't be inspired by that. But that's exactly what I was doing. And I thought to myself, I would love to be like these men and women in the Bible that were sold out for Jesus, but there was something missing in my life. There was something missing. And the Lord spoke to me clearly and he said this to me. He said, you're selfish. He said, you're actually selfish. And I said, what do you mean by that, Lord? And if I looked at my life, to be really honest with you, if I was just looking after my home, my family, and all of this here, yet all of this social, economic distress and unsaved people are out there, God was saying, you're selfish. Yes, you look after your family, that's great, but what are you doing? And you read in the Bible, the parable of the fool, and Jesus makes this comment. He says, and I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. And that's exactly what I was setting myself up for. It's wise to set up yourself for retirement, all that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But basically, that's all I was focused on, to be honest with you. Yes, I'd sing songs. Yes, I would say hallelujah. Yes, I'd pray for people, but basically I was living my life just like the world. The only difference was I was turning up to church on a Sunday and praying a little bit in between. And that was me. Maybe some of you relate to it, maybe some of you don't. But I got to a point where I asked myself the question, would God ever use me like he uses many of the men and women I read about? And I'd read about people like Billy Graham and Reinhard Bonnke, and I got Dave Hodgson, who runs KI, giving millions into the kingdom. And I thought to myself, I would love to be like those people. I'd love to leave footprints of change around the world, right? And then the enemy gets in. He goes, why would God ever use you? Why would God ever use you? You don't have what it takes. Maybe some of you felt like that before. I just felt like this discouragement. And I discounted myself before I even attempted anything. I disqualified myself. But there were 4 words that radically changed my life as a Christian. And it was 10 years ago. And you might say, David, what are those 4 words?
David, what are those?
Yeah. Good. This is good. You've caught on quickly. Yeah. I was in Perth, not last night, the night before, giving a similar program, or the same program, and I asked that question, and it was about a minute's silence before someone said something. So you're a lot quicker, you're a lot smarter than the Perth people. Sorry, this is being filmed, I didn't mean that. That was a joke. All right. So 4 words that helped me find my assignment and brought me influence and affluence for the kingdom in a way that I never thought possible. 4 words that gave me strength to overcome my fear, my personal fear, my lack inside of me, my limitations, and brought me to a whole new level of breakthrough. 4 words that have helped me fall back in love with Jesus and touch millions around the world. What are those 4 words? You may have already asked. It's God's will, God's way. Now today we're focusing on God's will for your life, your assignment, okay? Now we've seen this around the world now with this teaching. When people really understand this teaching that we're giving today and apply it, I'm not talking about listening to it, I'm talking about applying it, something changes. So I'll be challenging you today, not just in what I'm saying, but to actually activate what we're talking about. We've had people like a friend of ours who left the corporate world last year. He found his assignment, he just resigned. Good paying job, earning about $150,000 a year. And he felt called by God to leave, to be an entrepreneur, to fund the kingdom. Now he's setting up Amazon businesses, he's doing all kinds of stuff, traveling the world. Another person, a friend I knew, was passionate about rescuing people from the sex trade. Okay, little children. Left a good paying job to do that. We've had another friend of mine who was like suicidal, going through self-doubt, became an author, then travels the world ministering to women and removing the blockages in their head. That's actually my wife. You'll hear from her later. Yeah, she probably deserves a little bit of a clap for that. There you go, Simone. I'll get dinner tonight. Yep. Excellent. Got some brownie points. Okay, so it starts with us doing our assignment. So what is your assignment, you might ask? What is your assignment? Well, I'm going to make it really simple for you. He gave you birth because something had to be done on earth that required your existence. I'm just going to make it really simple. You've heard all this before. Something was ordained for you to do on earth. So, this scripture here, I love this scripture. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Isn't that incredible? Yeah. I think that's amazing. That God saw each of you in this room, in your mother's womb, and before you were even born, He set you apart. He set you apart for a specific purpose before you even came out and recorded. You've got a book written about you. It's a bestseller. You'll see it one day in heaven. Your plans for your life, the plans God set you apart for life, He did before you were even born. You were created for God's work. He thought ahead of time. He thought ahead of time about you. You as an individual. Not you as a collective, you as an individual. He thought, you're going to be born into this type of family, this culture, you're going to go through these experiences because they're all the things that are going to set you up to fulfill the purpose and the assignment I have for your life. Isn't that awesome? It's so awesome. The God, just carefully think about that. The God of the universe, the God that has 100 million angels worshipping Him, is the God that set you apart for His work on earth. Now, here's the problem. You have been made uniquely, every single one of you. And this is probably the number one problem I see, and I'll give this as an illustration. All right. Anyone know what that is? It's a can opener, tin opener. Everyone has this in their house, true? Or most of you, yeah? What does it do? Open tins. This is good. You're catching on quickly. Okay, it opens tins. It's the only thing in the house that has been made for a specific purpose of opening tins. Now, one day before this can opener was born, all right, someone thought, I need to craft something that solves the problem of unopened cans. So the Creator created this to fulfill the purpose of unopened cans. And out came this beautiful little can opener. Okay? Lived a beautiful little life, and that's what he or she does. True? Now, here's the problem. We compare ourselves. We compare ourselves to other people. And what I've found when people go to try and discover their assignment, what happens is they look at other people and they project and they think, I'd like to be like this person. I did it. I thought at one stage, I'd like to be like whoever, Dave Hodgson or Reinhard Bonnke or any of these people. And God spoke to me and rebuked me and said, no, I want you to be you. I want you to be you. You have been uniquely made for a purpose. Now think about this in your household. It doesn't look at the stove, for example, and say to the stove, gee, I wish I was like you. You're so hot. Come on. You got to give me something for that. And the stove doesn't look at the can opener and says, it's okay for you. You get to travel. You get to go around in circles every day. And sometimes I see you get taken out on picnics. I've never got to travel. I have to stay here all day. And sometimes I'm so hot. It doesn't. The stove was made to heat meals. This was made to open cans. There's one of these in the house, and there's one stove in the house. And they've made for a specific purpose. And guess what? There's one of you in the house of God, and you have been made for a specific purpose. And it doesn't matter what someone else is doing or what you like about that other person's assignment. God has made you for a specific assignment. Nothing else can open cans like this, and nothing else can do the assignment like you can. All right? So, next thing I just want to cover is when we're talking about assignment today, we can tend to limit ourselves to our own limitations. If you look throughout the Bible, Noah, Moses, all the guys in the Bible that were given assignments, all right? Gideon, Saul, David, all of them, their assignments were mission impossible. There's no way they could achieve that assignment without God, true? And so what happens to us as individuals, we look at what God might be asking us to do, and then we discount ourselves like many men and women did in the Bible when they were given their assignment. If you research that, you study that, you see them. They would go, no, I'm not the person. Moses did it. All right? Gideon did it. He said that I'm the least of my tribe. Why would you choose me? All right? David, King David, before he became King David, he was judged by others. And maybe that's the same for many of you here today. You feel like you've been judged by other people. Maybe you feel discouraged. Maybe you feel that you don't have what it takes. But if we go off what happened in the Bible, if we go off and look at these stories, we see that every one of them were promoted and used by God powerfully, even though they didn't think they had what it took to actually execute their assignment. So that's encouraging to know that. They all doubted themselves. If we look in the mirror every day, we see that we have been made uniquely. And sometimes, we're all extremely unique. I mean, have a look around the room now. Can you see someone exactly the same as you? No? We're all strange, aren't we? I mean that in the best possible way. We're all kind of unique. And I'll tell you, I sometimes think, I would limit myself. I'd go, well, I don't have what it takes. Why would God use me? I'm strange. I remember many years ago, I was coaching a client. I used to do coaching. I was coaching this lady, and she was sitting opposite me. When you're in conversation with someone and you start to drift off? You ever had that? And your mind starts to wander, and then you've got to get back on track? If you're nodding heaps and your husband or wife is next to you, don't, okay? But I remember sitting opposite this lady, and I started to drift. She was talking about her business. It was quite important. I shouldn't have drifted. And as she was talking, I was just fiddling with my face. And I felt like an eyebrow that was kind of, a hair on my eyebrow that was kind of sticking out a bit. And what I did is I pulled it out, and I started to just chew it. This is true. Yeah, Mr. B. And she looked at me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I realised what I was doing, and I said, "I've been fasting, I'm just eating my eyebrows." You'll see me when I go out for lunch later on. I usually have a bowl of eyebrows with dip. But I was shocked that I actually did that. And she said, "You are so unique." And I said, "Thank you." I think it was a compliment. But we are all unique. We do strange things, but God can use us. True? You're not going to look at me ever the same again, are you? You're going to check out my eyebrows. Are they all there? I do have some patches. I've been hungry lately. Okay. So, we look through the Bible, as I said, we see David, Gideon, Moses. They're all given great assignments, but they felt disqualified. They're epic assignments, but this is what I want to say to you, that the favour and influence of God is attached to the assignment, not the individual. This is really important to understand this today. A lot of people, majority of Christians do not understand this. When you look through the Bible, Gideon, take Gideon, he took on a huge army. To take on that army and win, he had to have the favour of God. Noah, to build the ark, he had to have the favour and influence of God. True? How do you build an ark with no knowledge of boats or anything? Moses, to bring 2 million people out of Egypt, he had to have the favour of God. All right? So the assignment, the favour goes with the assignment. Now see, many Christians, when they come to this, they go, David, I don't understand why the favour and influence and affluence of God isn't working in my life. 9.9 times out of 10, they are not on assignment. Why would God need to give you influence and favour to execute something that you're not doing or you're refusing to do? Okay, so we have this culture, we've had this culture that says, okay, God, bless me, bless me, bless me. But that's not what God's about. God's saying, you do your assignment that I've asked you to do, then I'm going to run with you. Because this is mission impossible, you need me. So when you look through the Bible, all these men and women were promoted by God because I believe, based on our study, 4 things worked powerfully together for them to fulfill their assignment. So I want to talk about the first one now. I'll give you a quick example of this. So let's look at David's life in the Bible. Everyone knows David, the little shepherd boy. He had the worst job in the world. He was a social outcast. You know, looking after sheep, you're a social outcast, all right? So you know the story. Samuel came along and basically said, okay, have you got another brother? And everyone's going, another brother? You've got to be kidding. You're not talking about David, the little social outcast David. And Samuel's going, yeah, I'm talking about David. And obviously David is chosen and he's anointed with oil by Samuel. And this is quite incredible because when you see this, he makes his comment and he says, the Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So what preceded his destiny? What preceded the destiny for David was intimacy with the Lord. Intimacy with the Lord. God was looking at the heart. All these other brothers were standing there. They may have looked the part on the outside, you know, tall, handsome, whatever it might be. But David looked at God looked at the heart. So my question to you, and this is such an important question, how much time do you spend on the development of your intimacy or your heart compared to those things on the exterior? Dave spent most of his time on his intimacy with the Lord. That's where he invested his time. You know, I did some research. If you look at the world, $64 billion is spent every year on beauty. $64 billion. Imagine if we spent that amount of time and energy on the kingdom or on our intimacy with the Lord. You know, some of you today, look around the room. Some of you have spent a lot of time on your appearance today. Right? It's made no difference. True? I am joking, by the way. You're the best looking bunch I've seen in the last few minutes. Oh, seriously. We can't take ourselves seriously, do we? We don't have to. The problem is, and I want to say this, many of us have been convinced that the pleasures of life are more exciting than the relationship with Jesus. We have been convinced that our to-do lists, our businesses, and everything in between are more important than our time with Jesus. We've been convinced that our to-do lists, our social get-togethers, our entertainment is more important than time with the Lord. Now, it's not what we verbalise, it's what we do. People don't run around saying, hey, I spent all this time doing this and not with the Lord. We don't say it, but we live like that. Some of you in the room right now are going through tough times. Family, loss, finances, maybe health issues. Maybe some of you are really stressed. Maybe some of you are in pain right now. And some of you are thinking, if I can just get through this trial, if I can just get through this stuff, then I'm going to spend time with the Lord. Then I'll do it. Let me ask you a question. Are you open to the possibility that intimacy with God could be better than the pain? That intimacy with God could be better than your to-do list. That intimacy with the Lord could be better than your responsibilities in the marketplace. You know, I'm focusing on this really carefully because what most people do when we run Finding Your Assignment, they go, no, just help me find my assignment, everything will be fine. Well, who gives you your assignment? It's the Lord. And what I've found, I have business people and other people sit down with me all the time and they go, David, you know, things aren't working or, you know, it's not happening for them. And I always ask them 3 questions. And the first question I always ask is, where is your intimacy with the Lord? You know, Dave Hodgson, who runs a $1 billion organisation, who started KI, spends a day a week. Now, he has an excuse, you know, not to spend that day, but he does. And there was a time in his business, we were talking the other day, where he built it to 100 million, and he had people around him saying, you're so stupid taking that day out because you should be in the office and being productive and doing all this stuff. And they kind of disassociated with him. And since that time, it's grown from 100 to $1 billion. And you know what he puts it down to? That intimacy with the Lord. Because Noah, he had to have intricate details from the Lord to build the ark. If you want intricate details on how to fulfill your assignment, you need intimacy. But we have been convinced in our culture that intimacy isn't important, that doing the to-do list and doing all of this is much more important than intimacy with the Lord. And if you read through the whole Bible, you will see when people went off track, God would bring circumstances into their lives in order to put them back on their knees and back into intimacy with the Lord. It happened with us. We basically lost a $21 million business, not lost it, we were persecuted, but I actually believe it was the Lord standing me down to get my attention again and bring me back to intimacy with him. That is so much more important than the stuff. But the problem is, we think intimacy, we've never maybe experienced the intimacy I'm talking about, and hence we don't place a value on it. Now let me give you this as a quick example. There was a team of missionaries that went to Korea. And they're over there, they get captured by the Taliban. Imagine that, being captured by the Taliban. They're thrown in wooden cages, right? All locked up, they're in wooden cages I can't remember for how long, and I can't remember where I heard the story, but it's stuck in my head. And they're in these wooden cages, and eventually they're brought out of these wooden cages and they're thrown in a room together. They start arguing about who's going to die first because the Taliban said, we're going to kill each of you one by one. And the pastor puts his hand up and says, I'll go first, I'm the pastor. And then the elder goes, no, you should, and the elder raises his hand and says, no, I should go first because I'm the elder. And then someone from their congregation put their hand up and said, no, I should be first because you're the pastor and the elder, so you've got to look after the flock. And they're sitting in this room and they're arguing with each other about who's going to be killed first. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, to cut a long story short, a couple of them were killed. The rest of them go back to Korea. And then what happened over the next 3 to 4 months is quite surprising. One by one, the people that were left, and I think there was about 16 or 17 left, they start going to the pastors one by one, to the pastor one by one. And you know what they said? They said this. They said, I'm not really enjoying life back here in Korea because I can't get back the same intimacy I had when I was in those wooden cages in the middle of Afghanistan. Now we hear that and we go, that's nuts. In our culture, we go, that's nuts. Why would you want to be back in a wooden cage, right? Rather than, look where we live, rather than somewhere like this. And the answer is very simple. Because the intimacy they had in those wooden cages far outweighed the pleasures of the environment that they found themselves in after that experience. Imagine having that intimacy that you would want to be in a wooden cage. And I believe that's the intimacy that we can have with the Lord when we truly understand what He wants. Yeah? So for me, I started to carefully examine myself and I realised I'd made progress in parts of my Christian life. I'd made progress in my faith. I'd made progress in the knowledge of God. I'd made progress in, networking with people and bringing the kingdom in. But there's one area that I realised I'd completely fallen away from. And I realised there was times in the past I'd been more in love with Jesus than I was at that point in my life. So I ask you the question this morning, or this afternoon, or this morning. Where are you truly at with your intimacy with the Lord? Where are you truly at? Not what other people would say about you, but what would you say about yourself? If Jesus stood here right now and he looked out upon you as individuals, not as a group, what would he say about your intimacy? And this isn't to kind of create guilt or condemnation or anything silly like that. It's really to bring you to a place of examining yourself like I did. And I realised I'd been more in love with Jesus in the past. And I got to a point where I narrowed my focus, my Christianity. Rather than narrowing my focus to an experience I have on a Sunday, I narrowed my focus to my intimacy with the Lord. I think as Christian believers, if we narrowed our focus to intimacy with the Lord, that's when things start to happen. All right, we're getting testimonies all over the world coming to us of people going, you never believe what's happened. As soon as I started getting intimate with the Lord and he started speaking to me, things are starting to fall into place. And I'm not saying it's about a formula, because God isn't a formula. You spend time with Jesus because you want to spend time with Jesus. Full stop. You don't spend time with Jesus because you're going to get something, but something naturally happens when you get intimate with the Lord. There's a fruit that comes from it. And I know for myself, that's what happened. You see, your productivity, your prosperity, your protection, and your progress in advancing the kingdom of God in the marketplace are all directly related to the level of intimacy you have with the Lord. They are utterly inseparable, and without exception, when intimacy levels lapse, people, ministries, and assignments collapse. That's what happens. Intimacy is something that bears fruit. And I started to get more intimate with the Lord, and something started to happen. Something started to take place. You know, I even remember, to give you an example, I was travelling to Africa a lot and overseas, and I'd come home and I would park in the driveway of our house, and my little girl, she's about 4 or 5 years old, little blonde mop of hair, she'd run out and she'd wrap her arms around me and start kissing my neck, and she's going, Daddy's home, Daddy's home. And as a father, I love that. I love it. I was just like, man, my girl, I get to squish my girl again. And she's going, Daddy, I'm so excited to see you. I said, I missed you so much. I'm so sweaty, I missed you too. It was like a movie, you know, like a movie scene where you're eating the popcorn and crying. It's one of those. And I'm like, this is so awesome. And that's how the Father feels about each one of us. I didn't go, hey, her name's Isabella. Isabella, have you cleaned your room? Have you looked after everything in the house? Have you done all that? Then you can come out and hug me. And what happens sometimes is we don't approach God because we have this self-condemnation, or we don't think we're good enough, and we have all this stuff happening. But she'd just run out and I'd just wrap my arms around her. But something strange happened after that. I bought her an iPad. You know where this is heading. So I bought her this iPad. And I remember pulling into the driveway. I'd been away for a while. And I'm listening for the front door to open and for her to come running out. And this particular time, there's no one runs out. No one's there. I'm like, where's my little girl? My big girl ran out. It was still solid. Because I haven't bought her an iPad. And so I run inside, and there she is on the bed playing on the iPad. I'm like, sweetie, Daddy's home. She's like, oh, hi, Dad. Yeah, really, thanks. It really boosted me up, sweetie. Thanks for the welcome. But here's the thing. What I gave to my daughter to bless her is the very thing that took her affection away from me. My question to you today, God has given you everything. Your clothing, your house, your cars, your investments, everything. But sometimes what he gives us to bless us with is the very thing that takes our affection away from him. And that's what I find in the marketplace and when we're teaching these programs. It's the stuff that takes our affection away from the Lord. Entertainment, sport, whatever it is. And the Lord is saying to you today, will you just throw that iPad down and run into the arms of Jesus and just spend that time with him? I remember when Simone and I first started going out, when we first fell in love, I would just be like, anyone fallen in love? Yeah? No, just so 3 of you. Okay, this is going really well. Okay. But you know that feeling, right? When you fall in love with someone. What happens? You get all gooey and you kind of like, you want to spend time with them and you just love spending that time, and when they call you, you're like, yeah, okay. Like Simone would call me and go, you want to go for a coffee? Oh yeah, yep, let's go for coffee. She'd go, you want to go to the beach? Yep, let's go to the beach together. Was I sitting there going, hang on a minute, let me just analyse this a minute. I'd just be like, yes, let's do it. Even now when she calls me, you know, I say, yeah, let's do it. Let's go wherever, do whatever, because we're in love, right? But what happens with our relationship with Jesus is someone says, hey, let's go pray, or let's go and do this. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, maybe. And we have this reaction like, oh, bummer, I've got to go and pray, or I've got to go and find my assignment, or whatever it might be. And we know that's a reflection on the relationship. When I fell back in love with Jesus, everything changed. I became passionate about souls. And that's what happened for me. I decided to make a conscious decision. I thought, God, I'm going to find my assignment. All right? If you spoke to people like David and Gideon and Noah and Moses, you spoke to them because they had intimacy with you. So I started deliberately spending time with Jesus. We all go on holidays together. We all have days off. We have dates. Why don't you have a date with Jesus? Right? And I just start spending time. And something happens. Sometimes it's a labour of love. Like you'd be praying there, you know, Lord, you know, help me with my daughter's iPad, you know, help me with my Mr. Bean complex. You know, I'd just be praying. I would be praying, right? And then all of a sudden I start wandering. I'd be thinking, okay, what have I got to do for work today? Ever happened to you? You're like praying and then your mind kind of switches in and out. And then I just kept at it. I kept at it. And then all of a sudden, I was at dinner one night with my friends. And we're sitting at the table. And I've got this urge as we're sitting in the table, we're eating. And I just said to them, I excused myself from the table because I know this sounds really bizarre. I was missing my time with Jesus. And I said, I've got to go to the bathroom. I know, it's weird. And I went to the bathroom and I just sat and I just spoke to Jesus. I thought, wow, something's happened in me. I'm not the lukewarm, apathetic guy that's just doing Sunday to Sunday. Something's happened. And people would start speaking about souls. I'm going, man, I'm passionate about souls. I'm like, where's this coming from? Someone said, Jesus. And then I got passionate about the kingdom. And then a lady and a man turned up to a house and they started speaking about Sudan and the genocide that was going on and the 400,000 people that had been killed in the 1990s. And my spirit just leaps. It just leaps. So I'm giving you clues here to how your assignment comes, right? And it just starts leaping. I'm going, wow, why am I so... I've never been to Africa. I don't have anything about Africa. And she starts talking and giving these stories of how women, this sticks out in my mind, that were pregnant were having their bellies cut open and babies ripped out and then hit against trees. And I'm outraged. I'm like, how can this be happening in the world and no one does anything about it? 400,000 people are genocided. You know, and you hear about 9/11. 3,000 people were killed and there's documentaries and thousands of news articles and those lives are just as important. But then 400,000 people are killed and ladies are having their babies ripped out and we don't hear anything about it. And I'm like, God, and my heart just started to break. I don't know what it was. I just started, imagine, when you get to a point where your heart breaks for what breaks Jesus' heart, something happens, right? And then I'm praying and I'm asking the Lord, what is my sign? Help me with this. And out of this intimacy, I get to this point where he starts revealing my assignment to me. right? And it wasn't like he didn't hover down from the sky or anything like that, but it's just what was bubbling up in my heart. I became passionate about what the Lord was passionate about, and I couldn't help it. Isn't it cool when you get to that place? This is good. There's good discussion around the room, which is great to see. So I've got a question. In our culture, obviously the Australian culture, what do you think? What are some of the things that take, or what have you discovered in discussing it with your group, affections away from the Lord or our intimacy with the Lord?
To-do lists.
To-do lists? Anyone relate to that?
Yeah.
It's like once I get my to-do list done, then I'll spend time with the Lord. We've got, Jesus, what would he do when, he would have so much demand for his time, okay? If people just, he was so popular. What would he do? He would retire to the mountain to pray. I often visualise that, for those of you who've been to Israel. Israel's a beautiful place. And I just picture Jesus with this whole crowd around him. They're like, I'm dying, I'm hurt, I need healing. And the instinct of a human being is to attend to that. But he would just retire because he knew intimacy with the Lord was the thing that he needed to fulfill his assignment on earth. So what other things? To-do lists, what other things can prevent us from having intimacy with the Lord? Media, yeah. So like I spoke about before, like iPads, phones, all the advent of that. I remember when we didn't, everyone, well, there's a lot of you in the room remembers no phones, right? No mobile phones. And you had the big dial phones with the thing. I always wondered why 0 was right at the end, in an emergency. You know the phones where you go like this, and you sorry? Rotary dial, yeah. Why was 0, like it'd take half an hour to ring 000. I thought it was stupid.
It's actually to prevent children from dialing accidentally.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, I still dialed it. What else? What else? So, technology?
Well, technology, but also there's cultural hostility to talking about.
Yeah.
And as you said, the stupidity when you say to people taking a day off.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's...
You can get impact.
Yeah.
Been impacted.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure anyone else in the room could hear that, but when you take time out of your schedule, whether it be your family schedule or your work schedule, there can be almost judgment from other people. What are you doing? Why are you taking time out? It's like the Martha thing, you should be Martha doing stuff around here rather than at the feet of Jesus. So that does work against us. Anything else that you've discovered in your discussions?
Escapism generally.
Escapism?
So it can be the technology or the books or
Yeah.
go out for coffee, but
Yep.
get away from what's really going on.
Yeah. What else?
Just life in general.
Life in general? Yeah, the hectic pace of life, absolutely.
More everywhere.
Yeah. Yes? Your mind? Yeah, your mindset. Yeah. So can you develop on that a bit further? You mean like your mind, from a mindset point of view, you're saying it's more important to do this stuff over there than there? Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me, yes? Procrastination, are you sure about that?
I was going to once and I never got around to it.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later about that, but I'm not sure if I will. Yes?
We had a question raised about the actual definition and the understanding of intimacy.
Yeah.
Where that falls in, what's classed as intimate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good question because I think everyone will have their own take on it. I don't profess to being a theologian or anything like that, but we've been made in the image of God, right? And He wants relationship, and we have experience in relationship on earth. We know what that's like. The word "no" in the Bible, in I think it's Matthew where it says, "Depart from me, I never knew you." That word "knew" is a Greek word called gnoski, and gnoski is derived from a Jewish idiom, a Jewish idiom, which means it means the intimacy that the Lord wants with us is the same intimacy, the meaning of intimacy that a man and woman have when they're together, physically together. That's what it means. He goes, I want to know you like that, in the emotional sense. That's how I want to know you. That's how close I want to be to you. All right? So that was, when I studied that, I found that, quite incredible. There's another part in the scriptures where he talks about, if you don't hate your mother, your father, your brother, and your sister, that scripture? And he says you cannot be my disciple, but it's a hyperbole. What he's saying in that is, if your love for me isn't greater than your love for me should be so great that it would seem like hate to your brother, sister, mother, and father. And to us, it's just really, it's hard to grasp hold of that sometimes. You just go, man, that's crazy. Like, can I imagine that? But here's the funny thing. I think, I'm not too sure if I'm answering the question, but I think intimacy with the Lord is really, it has to come out of time with him. There has to be an investment into him, and for some people it's different. For some people, they can be intimate with the Lord by worship. My wife is a worshipper. She'll get the guitar out and worship for hours. For other people, they are bookworms, and they go, man, I feel so close to the Lord when I just get the word of the Lord into me. And I think that's the cool thing. God has made us all uniquely, right? And I think he interacts with us in different ways. For me, I walk in the bush, and that's where I really connect with the Lord. I remove myself from all people, all distractions, no phones, no nothing. It's just him and I. And I love it. That's where I connect with him. So I think it's personal. It's personal to you and how you connect. And he knows you. He knows your personality. And he'll connect with you in that way as you seek him. All right. Any other comments? Yeah.
I discovered as I was writing the answers and sort of journaled it that I'm actually scared to hear what you're saying, because it may not be what I want to do.
Yeah.
Or it may not be what I think my purpose is.
Yeah. Simone's going to cover that later. Did you want to say something? Yeah, you're welcome to.
That's actually not an uncommon thing to have happen to us. So we can be not only afraid of failure, but we can also be afraid of success. So there's different ends of the paradigm that we can sit on it, anywhere in between that. But it's not an uncommon thing. I am going to address part of that when I share my testimony later. So, but what I will say is it's a great revelation that you've now brought into your conscious mind, so now you can deal with it and get rid of it.
Yeah, there's so many reasons. You can see as we go around the room, everyone battles or struggles with different things. And the thing I want to encourage you with is when you truly commit, the scriptures, ask and you'll receive, knock, all that stuff that we quote. But if you do it, something happens. This is where I walk pretty much every morning in the bush. I'm just showing you, just giving you a bit of my testimony, but I just spend time with him, and something happens when I'm alone with him. You all know that already. Many of you may be intimate with him. I don't know where you're at on your journey. There's another place I go to on our jet skis, up to a dam called Barumba. And it's just beautiful. You just sit there, and there's birds, and there's snakes. I actually was there last week, and there was a grey bull. There's a bull, and it's not bull, there was a grey bull, and it was standing about 100 metres from where I was in my hammock, and I couldn't go to sleep. I was so nervous about this bull, because I was in his territory. And, knowing my luck, I just sort of doze off, and then the next thing I'm in the water, off we go. But I go there because I remove myself from the temptations. I don't know if you get tempted by stuff. Like, when I say tempted, like if you're at home and you're trying to pray and the TV's on or the phone rings, you got all these distractions around with you. I encourage you, wherever you're at, is to remove yourself from the temptations if people are tempted by that stuff. I tried praying at home, and it was next to impossible in our household because there's either dogs or cats, or there's just stuff happening around us all the time. So, yeah, just encourage you in that. All right, so that's intimacy. And I've got a video now that I want to show you from Dave Hodgson, where he talks a little bit about intimacy. You'll see that he has a slightly different take on it, but comes back to saying it's vitally important. I just want to point out this video was for when I was in Perth on Thursday night, so he's referencing that, but it still has the same impact for here today.
G'day guys, really sorry I couldn't make it up to Perth to be with you tonight, so I hope you've had a good time so far with Archbishop David Leslie, and obviously in very good hands there. Okay, so we're busy preparing to go to Nigeria in a couple of days, so lecturing at a big conference over there, and then got to be in Jakarta soon after that, and then the States, and then Israel, and then the Netherlands, and so on. So it's as hectic as always, and in between all of that we're trying to reformat the entire KI website so that we have proper, well, the new KI Academy is coming online, KIBN's business development from world leaders in their fields and so on, which is why I couldn't be with you. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. Righto, so the question is, how much of a bearing did intimacy have on me finding my assignment, intimacy with the Lord? So in the original context of finding my assignment, intimacy had very little effect at all because I wasn't very intimate with the Lord. Okay, so really basically, you know, it was a very straightforward prophetic word, go and do this. When I got there to do it, it was confirmed, and the confirmation was, you will write 6-figure checks for this church in the near future. So for me, as an entrepreneur and as a business person of 23 years by then, that wasn't too much of a mystery to me. So at that point, I wasn't intimacy with the Lord. I wasn't intimate with the Lord. The Lord knows that. He knows how intimate you are. He's tweaking things so that I actually do His will. He wants me to do stuff. So He's not going to start off by getting me to do something so intricate that I have no way of doing it unless my intimacy levels had risen sufficiently. So He was taking me through a process, which is so good. This is the love of God. Okay, so when it came to funding a church, writing a 6-figure check for a church, $100,000 check for a church, as an entrepreneur, that's not a mystery. Okay, that's pretty easy. That's my day job. I don't care if I've got no money. I'm an entrepreneur with a $2 million ceiling at the time. So it's not an issue. I can be poor one day and a millionaire the next day. I did it many times. But when the assignment grew, especially when the Lord showed me, okay, now that you've established a $100 million company, now that you've been, you know how to do it and so on, I want you to go and counsel the kings. Okay, so in other words, that was when KI was actually born. When the Lord said, I want you to counsel the kings, I was so naive, I didn't even know who the kings were. This is Prince Harry and Prince William, and what am I going to say, and how am I going to get an audience, and, you know, you sure, have you got the right guy, Lord? When I understood it's the business people, and I understood what the Lord wanted me to do, that was a whole new world for me. So I needed details, and I was compelled to become intimate with the Lord, to find the detail, because nobody would help me. I actually emailed, I said to my pastor, you know what, I feel spiritually lonely doing what I'm doing, teaching this stuff. And the pastor said to me, why don't you, I was trying to get out of it, so I wanted to give up. I was hoping the pastor was, okay, Dave, you can stop now, you know, go and play on your jet ski. But he didn't. He said, why don't you email all the big shots around, I'll give you all their email addresses, all the circuit speakers, tell them in 3 short bullet points what you're doing and ask for their opinion. So I did that. I think 24 of them I emailed. Only one of them ever got back to me, and he said, I will get, so only one of them ever replied. He said, I'll get back to you, and he never did. So I was on my own. Okay, so I needed to be much more intimate with the Lord because no one was helping me. And this is how important it was to the Lord that I be intimate with Him. Okay, so I'm having breakfast with my pastor. This is so important, you guys. I was having breakfast with my pastor one day, and he said to me, Dave, that Paladin Corporation of yours is getting quite big. You know, it's like well over $100 million company, and you're above the radar, and this and that and that. And you know, how much quality time are you spending with the Lord? And I said, you know what, Dan? Like I get up at 4 a.m. every day, and I go and pray for an hour, and my prayer time is, you know, really intense, and this and that. Then I'm in the gym. And he said, no, I'm talking quality time, Dave. I said, Dan, who else in your church does this? And he said, it doesn't matter what they're doing. We're talking about you. What are you doing? And that was it. So he said, well, what you should be doing is taking a whole day to go and pray. And I thought, you have got to be kidding, okay? I know you're a pastor, and you're a really wise pastor, but you're not in the marketplace, so you haven't quite got it, this is my naive thinking. Anyway, I said, yeah, all right, I just wanted to shut him up and get him off my back, and I had no intention of doing it. So, a few weeks later, I introduced Pastor Dan to Pastor Doug, okay? We were having lunch together this time, and I know both pastors really well. He's my pastor. This is one I have coffee with quite often. He's not only a pastor, he also runs the biggest car dealership on the Sunshine Coast. So he's a big shot business guy and a big shot pastor. He's leading the biggest church on the coast, and we're having lunch. We want to buy some land off him to build our church. And Doug says to me, Dave, that Paladin's getting pretty big now. What's your quality time with the Lord look like? And Dan just started laughing because he remembered what had happened 3 weeks earlier. And Doug says, what's the problem? I'm serious. And I said, yeah, I know you're serious, but I think you two know each other, and he's told you. And Doug said, what are you talking about? So he explained it, and we all laughed. And he said, so, will you? I said, yeah, Doug, okay, but I'm still pondering it, thinking, a whole day, you've got to be off your face, running. By then we had a group of about 20 companies in the Paladin group and all sorts going on. Anyway, a few weeks after that, there's a general, it's Anzac Day, and there's a general coming to talk at our church, and I'm driving to church because the pastor said, Dave, this is the general, you're ex-military guy, you can introduce him, okay? Yeah, sure, Dan. So I'm driving to church, and I'm talking to my wife, Merlene, along the way, and I explained what happened. First, Dan said, how's your intimacy levels? And then Doug said the same thing. This was in like 2003, somewhere back there. And, how are you, this and that. So I'm talking to Merlene, and she says, well, she kind of looks at me strange, and like, 2 pastors have told you, what more do you need, sort of thing. I was like, oh, okay. Well, she said, if I was you, I'm thinking, yeah, I should never have told her. Anyway, to church, and I have to get up and introduce the general. So I did that, and there's this old fossil at the back there staring me out, really looking angry with me, and I'm thinking, no, I've upset this old fossil, he's going to come and shout at me afterwards, because I told him a little joke, and I did make it light, and I thought he upset with a joke. Anyway, the general did his talk, and then this guy came with a beeline straight over to me, and I thought, wow, we're in trouble now. Anyway, he came up and he said, would you take a word from me? And I sort of looked at him because I didn't know him, he didn't know me, and I'd never seen him before. And he said, I can see what you're thinking, and I understand that. You don't know who I am. He said, but you can ask him, and I'm one of the founding fathers of Christian Outreach Centre. I was here at the beginning. And I said, oh, my apologies, go ahead. And he stuck his finger right next to my nose. He's a short guy, very, he's elderly, 70-something, but very strong, piercing blue eyes. And he just said, you are in the middle of making a decision towards getting closer and being more intimate with the Lord. And he went like this, you better make the right decision. And he turned and walked away. And of course, unfortunately for me, my wife was standing right next to me with that smile and nodding. And I thought, shut up. Anyway, that was what triggered it. So the point I'm making here is not just to tell you a story. I'm telling you how important, so important it was for God that he told me 3 times, I need your attention, because what's coming, you cannot handle without intimacy. I'm going to give you more of your assignment, and you are going to need to talk to me about how to do it, because it's never been done before. And that led on into the delivery from the Lord to me when I was praying in 2011. I want sheep nations in the world. I've never had a sheep nation. Solomon tried 3,000 years ago, stuffed it up. You're it. You're going to do it. You're going to do it in Australia, and you're going to lead it, and so on. So when that came, that is an assignment that is mission impossible. No human has ever done it. We're doing it now, but only because I was intimate enough with the Lord to say, wow, okay, I understand obedience, so that's okay, I'm going to do it. Don't stand me down again. There's no question about that. I'll commit unconditionally. But what is it like? What's a sheep nation, and what's it look like in the modern era? And what did Jesus mean when he told the disciples? And everyone else thinks that's an end-time eschatology, and there's this and that, and it's only for the Jews. I'm going to get all these scholars jumping down my throat, which they tried to do. So the point is, the answer to the question is, how important was intimacy with the Lord? So important. Soon after that, I started taking pray days. It was hard, it was difficult. There was an awesome lesson on the pray days, which is actually just finished being reformatted, and I think it's been uploaded in its new form now, especially for the KI chapters. That's one of the lessons we've had the most feedback on anywhere in the world, all over the world, is intimacy with the Lord, especially from the church. Okay, the pastors have really jumped onto that one. Okay, so that as I started to pray for a whole day, my intimacy levels obviously reached saturation point. You go out and like I do in the bush or wherever it works for you. You've got lots of ladies who do it now, and they tell me this one goes on the beach, that one goes into a quiet spare room she's got, and so on. You'll see all that in the commentary on our website. These ladies are all contributing. Where do they have their pray days? And they are getting so much information from the Lord that they're confident to do their assignments, which are in fact impossible. Okay, so I tell you guys, and that feedback that you get from the Lord is actually almost at email level and clarity. And on the pray day, on the Intimacy with the Lord lecture, I actually give some examples that it is so clear that the Lord can show you what He wants you to do. At one point in time, my assignment is vertical. The Lord took me off on a horizontal to go and help a business person who was very key, and still is very key to the kingdom of God, in another state in Australia, totally being attacked and collapsing in a heap. We cannot afford to lose the kings. The kingdom of God cannot afford to train up the mature kings. You know, to have to get rid of them and retrain again. The Lord wanted me to go and help Him. At the time, that meant a massive financial commitment. We were having a major battle with one of the most crooked banks in the country. They're all crooked. This is just one of the most crooked. And we also had a lot of sickness in the family. There was just a major attack on the house of Hodgson, virtually terminal sickness, okay, with dear members of my family, my daughter and so on. And yet all of this going on around us, and the Lord said, dude, I need you to go and rescue that lot over there, and it's going to cost a lot of money. But we couldn't even afford, we were struggling to pay the legal fees to fight this crooked bank who had given us 4 days to give them 14 mil, or they were closing down one of our companies, which would have been a problem for the whole group. I was intimate enough with the Lord to know that it had to be me, of all people, just like it had to be Esther, who had to do what Mordecai asked her to do, to go make supplication. She was the only person in the world who could do that. Your assignment is you are so strategic to your assignment, okay? You guys know that, Dave would have covered it. But the point is that I had to go there. I had to know why me, because I can't go off my assignment when the thing's imploding and the enemy's trying to take me out and everything. But the Lord was saying, this is more important. I will handle this bushfire. You go and do what I need you to do. There's no one else to do that. And I had to go and do that, and I did it. And it actually caused a split in our corporation, because my other directors were saying, you can't do that. We need this done, you know, and this and that and that. And I said, but this is what the Lord's shown us. Don't you see? Don't you understand? No, don't care. So we eventually, I bought them out eventually. But the point being, it was the intimacy levels that gave me the confidence and the confirmation to go over there and get on and fix what was going on there. And I did it. And we had to pull off some very fancy financial maneuvering and specialist financial movers that most people would not know about. Even banks didn't know. I had to remind a bank, a big major, of one of their credit policies and what we were doing and why. And that bank was the one that was foreclosing, and they had no option but to do it. Okay, so this is why it had to be me. I'm a financial architect. So for me to go and do that was probably the only guy around. And also we think alike and so on. There was a lot of confirmation of why it should be me. But the point is, I knew it should have been me because of the intimacy with the Lord, and then backed up with prophetic confirmation. So that's what happened, and that's why intimacy is so important with you guys. I hope, this is nothing new to the Perth audience. We've been teaching you intimacy for a long, long time. I hope you guys are taking pray days. We've had testimonies. One guy, he just told me the other day, his business has utterly exploded. I think when I was last with you in Perth, I actually read out his testimony. I put it on the screen. His business exploded. He came and lectured when we were in Florida the other day. He actually came down from Chicago to give his testimony. So it was awesome for him to do that. But there's lots of them. There's hundreds of them coming in like that. Okay? So please raise your intimacy levels. It will help you with your assignment.
Okay, how good is that? Give you some more insight? It is, isn't it? It's so important, intimacy. So it'll be interesting to see how the Lord directs you as you leave today and what you do differently. But you know what? Something happens, and to share a bit of my testimony. So when we got intimate with the Lord said to me, okay, I want you, I became passionate about the poor and the needy, which is what he talks about in Matthew 25. which is very interesting, when he has the nations in front of him, the people groups, and he's sorting out the sheep and the goats. You all know the scripture, right? So the sheep are the ones on the right. So who are the sheep? He said, when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was in jail, you visited me. So you're the sheep. Who's on the left? The goats, right? The goats are the ones that did nothing. The goats did nothing. And when you look at that in the context of what he's talking about, and David references it when he talks about sheep nations. When you think about the world at the moment, are there any sheep nations in the world? So what I mean by sheep nation is, I mean God's kingdom practically manifested on earth. Okay, no crime, no prostitution, no domestic violence, you know, everyone living in peace and prosperity and love. There's not one nation, is there, in the world? Not one sheep nation in the world.
New Zealand.
Well, that is true. New Zealand, yes. That is a very good point. New Zealand. Yeah, good on New Zealand. Got a lot of friends that come from New Zealand. Yeah, it's a good place. But best thing about New Zealand, I've heard, is a flight out of there. No, only joking, only joking. But the goats were the ones that did nothing. The goats were the ones that did nothing. Now, in that context, when you look at that and you look at the kingdom of God on earth, that means, if I go back to my slide, I won't go back to it, but my slide on generic Christianity, so you're looking after your house and your own stuff and that's all you do, then I was effectively operating like a goat. I wasn't, my view of Christianity was turn up to a building, sing a song and go home. All right? And, you know, maybe pray for a couple of people in between. But true Christianity, if you really look at what the Lord wants, if he's coming back and he decided to filter all of us in the room right now into sheep and goats, where would you stand? I don't know, you don't have to answer me, but where would you stand? Would you be a sheep or a goat? It's a challenging question. It's a really challenging question. So for me, at the time, I prayed, I said, Lord, show me. So it was out of intimacy that he gave me. I was praying and fasting literally for a week. And at 5 minutes to 5, on the last hour of my fast, the phone rings. And a pastor says to me, starts downloading to me that I hardly ever knew. I didn't know this guy. I'd met him once. He said, I've been praying for you and, you know, I believe you're going to preach and you're going to do all this stuff. And then the Lord started revealing more things to me. And I realised he was revealing more of my assignment. Sometimes your assignment just doesn't come in one block. It comes, you know, as you progress through life. And so at that time, I thought, if I'm going to make a change in the world, I need funding. True? We need funding. We need money, whether we like it or not. There's been a silly prosperity doctrine that's gone around the church that basically insinuates that you make money so you can just live a blessed life. But the Bible, yes, the Bible does talk about us living a blessed life, but the money, if God wants to give you lots of money, the money isn't so you can buy 15 jet skis and 400, you know, houses. It's to build his kingdom. That's what it's for. We can have food and shelter and go on nice holidays and all that kind of thing. That's great. But if you really want that wealth, the wealth is to build his kingdom. Not so you can stand there and say, look at me, I've got all this money and all these toys. How ridiculous. But I will just say this one thing. It's in the book of Proverbs. You should have one jet ski at least. All right? It's in the Amplified version, yeah. And it's not until you take the words back into Greek you fully understand it. That's probably why you've missed it. So for my wife and I, the Lord revealed that to me. So I thought, okay, what are my giftings? And I was naturally a risk taker and entrepreneur. So we built this business to about $21 million, and we had cash flow coming in. We're doing shopping centres and childcares and all this kind of stuff. Built it quite quickly over a 3-year period. And that was confirming in me my assignment to fund the kingdom. And so we started. At that time, I had a real heart for the poor. I remember being over in Cambodia, of all places, and I was standing on a rubbish dump, and there was a little girl that walks past 2 years old with a nappy on, like fossicking through, like this is a stinking, disgusting, like horrific place. It smelled like sulphur. The lady we were with from Australia was actually vomiting. It smelled so foul, but these people were living on the rubbish dump. And I just was horrified. Again, I was horrified. And I go, God, what are you going to do about this? You know, someone should do something. And he kind of, this small whisper into me, yeah, you should do something. So it was from that we partnered with an organisation called Destiny Rescue and started taking the children off the rubbish dump, and so we're funding this. I'm funding, then we started funding stuff in Africa and trying to break the poverty cycle over there. And it's all going well, and then all of a sudden things started to get a bit tight and things started to sort of rattle and shake and all the rest of it. And this is effectively what happened. So when you look at your assignment, I knew my assignment, so my assignment's there, A for assignment.
Can you use a dark colour?
Yes. Only my wife could say that. So there's my assignment. That's me there. All right. And so what happened? I'm doing my assignment, I'm creating wealth, I'm funding the kingdom, I'm doing stuff in Cambodia with Simone and in Africa, and felt like that's part of my assignment, I'm on track. And then I start to, so my allegiance, okay, I'll just put allege. My allegiance was to the Lord, my allegiance was to the assignment, okay? And then what happened is I started to drift. And when I say drift, I went back into the pattern, I suppose, of what I would call generic Christianity, and my allegiance shifted to, I'll say money, but money wasn't my God, but it shifted to just kind of having fun and doing all my stuff, and my intimacy levels and my allegiance to the assignment started to get a bit murky, all right? And what happens, if you look at the people when they came out of Babylon, okay, Haggai the prophet rebukes them. They were meant to be building the temple for God. That's what they were meant to be doing. And then he says, and they shift, they're at home, they're renovating their houses, okay? And Haggai rebukes them. He says, give careful thoughts to your ways. He repeats it twice. And what happened with them is, he said, you're putting money in your pocket only for the money to fall through your purse. Okay, your harvest, when you go to harvest, because it's an agricultural society, he says, I'm blowing your harvest away. And why was it? Was their allegiance had shifted. Their allegiance had shifted to self. And that's what happened with me. It had shifted to self and money and stuff. That's stuff, self and money. And so what happens when it shifts like that, everything over here started to collapse. All right, so he stood me down, all right? So he removed this. That's what he removed. And why did he do that? To bring my focus back to him. So we had a business of about $21 million, as I mentioned, and we got persecuted, and pretty much, I'll share more of the testimony later, but pretty much stood right down, okay? All removed. And what was the Lord doing? He was bringing my allegiance back to him. Okay, back to intimacy, and boy did I. At that time, Simone and I were struggling to put literally food on the table. We went from just writing checks everywhere and having fun and doing stuff and doing childcares overseas and to, can we put food back on the table? And it was the Lord standing me down. And my assignment got really rocky, but I decided to stay on assignment, and we got to, this happened over a period of a few years. We got to, that was in 2008, it started to get wobbly, and by 2011, I was really discouraged. I was so discouraged. I had felt like I'd failed. I felt like, even though we were persecuted illegally, the bank was illegally taking money from us, I felt like I'd failed as a husband and father. I even took Simone out for lunch, coffee one night at Mooloolaba on the Sunshine Coast, and I'd rehearsed a little speech for her, and I told her, I apologised, I said I've failed you as a husband, as a father to our children, and I said to her, you can leave me if you want. And she cut me out halfway through the conversation, and she said, because that day I'd got a phone call from the bank, and the bank basically said, we're about to take your house, we're about to take everything. And I said to Simone, it's all about to go. And she said, I don't care if I have to live on the street or in a caravan. She said, I'm never leaving you, I love you, and we're going to get through this together. Awesome woman of God. Bring a lot of joy to her life being Mr. Bean. I think that's the real reason. So that was a real strategic time for us and a humbling time for me as a man. But what it did is it brought me closer to God. It was one of the most horrific times in our life, but it brought me back to intimacy with the Lord. 2011, I'm praying, I'm saying, Lord, what is my assignment? Because it's collapsed. What is my assignment? And so what started to happen was he started redirecting me back to what my assignment was. Now, the second part of this is prophecy, prophetic word. It was quite incredible. So I was really discouraged, and maybe some of you in the room here today, maybe you're discouraged, maybe you're going through stuff, maybe there's things that aren't happening for you, or you're like, Lord, what is it? Kind of talk to me. But you know what, when we truly get intimate with the Lord again, he can bring prophetic words. And this is what happened. So I was invited to a church one night, and there was a pastor preaching, he was preaching on Elijah's jacket. And he said, at the end of the preach, I'm actually going to hit you with my jacket, and the Holy Spirit's going to hit you, and you know, things are going to start happening. And I thought, fair enough. I thought, what am I doing at this church? You ever been at a church, or you've been invited to a church, and you're like, what am I doing here? And so that was me. I was sitting at this church, and the guy then put some music on, all right? And he says, all right, everyone line up in a single line. And it was kind of like praise music, and everyone's kind of, you know, doing this and clapping and cheering and stuff like that. And as he's standing at the front with his coat, and he's whacking people with his coat as they come through, right? And they're kind of like, ooh, like this, and running through and making strange noises and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, for my personality, all right, for my personality, this is not me. And I said to Simone, I said, I got to get out of here. This is crazy. What this guy's doing. This is just nuts. Like, for me, all right. I'm not judging him. I just thought I don't want to be the centre of attention. It's funny how God's got me up here, but I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm thinking, if the guy hits me with his jacket, I'm likely to hit him. Okay. That's how I felt. That's honestly how I felt. And Simone's like, no, go, do it. I'm like, and I'm edging up in the line, and he's whacking that next person, and they're like, ooh, and going through, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. You know, and I was just doing it out of compliance, all right? And I got to him, and he's about to whack me with his jacket, and, you know, I had my, you know, and he goes, stop, everyone stop, turn down the music. I'm like, oh, here we go. But why, like, how does that happen to me? Why me? He goes, hang on a minute. And then he starts to prophesy over me. And he basically says, you called to crusades, and you called to finances, and he's like reading my book, and I'm like thinking, has someone said something to him? And it's just so accurate. And I went home with Simone, repented that night for my lack of enthusiasm and belief in what was happening. But it was one of the most accurate words. And I thought to myself, I need to be convinced in twos or threes. I thought, he's just fluked it, right? But he filled with faith, right? And so then a few months later, we're down on the Gold Coast, and we're in a building, and they invited these prophets over. And there's some people there from Bethel and a few other guys. There's probably 40 or 50 on this floor overlooking the beaches of the Gold Coast. And I'm there, and I'm minding my own business again. And I'm sitting right up the back of the room on the edge of the window looking out. And there's about 40 or 50 people in this room. And this Scottish guy comes in. And a Scottish prophet. He goes, oh, the Holy Spirit is here. That's what he said. I'll never forget, oh, the Holy Spirit is here. And he said, I want to prophesy over someone here. And I thought, okay, well, this is great, this is good. And I'm just sitting there. I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention. I was eating my eyebrows. And so he walks, and he starts walking. He said, oh, I can feel the Spirit here. I've got to prophesy over someone. Am I still Scottish? No, hang on a minute. Oh, yeah, okay. And so he starts walking through, and then I'm thinking, surely he's not coming for me. And then he moves through all the crowd, and then comes over and puts his hand on my shoulder and starts prophesying this accurate word again about doing crusades and about God's going to restore finances because we'd lost everything, and this whole redemptive prophecy about me bridging the marketplace and the ministry. And I'm like, this is impossible. This is impossible. But I walked away that day so encouraged that the Lord had spoken to me. And so I'm building obviously expectation for the end of the day, but what I'm saying is that was birthed out of intimacy. That came out of intimacy. As soon as I got intimate with the Lord, I started crying out with him, and then another prophecy came. So I had 3 very clear prophecies in a very short period of time about my assignment, all right? And so what I encourage you to do is write down your prophecies and look for themes and concepts in the prophetic words, all right? Because as you start to do that, you will see a pattern starting to emerge. Now, that's the childcare. What happened for me is that when I look through, I've actually put the prophecies on the back of that page for you to, just as an example of the prophetic words that I was given, because there was 3 themes coming through in every single one of those prophecies. Each colour represents a different prophetic person. And so I started studying them and knew straight away that my assignment was broken up into 3 areas. It was funding the kingdom, marketplace teaching is what I'm doing here today, and crusades. All right? They kept coming through in every prophecy. Every one of those prophecies, all 3 concepts kept coming through. So what I encourage you to do is, if you haven't done it already, if you've had prophetic words in the past, write them down, type them out, and start studying them, read them, pray over them, pray them back to God, and look at the concepts and themes that are coming through, all right? It's very powerful. And I've stood on this since 2011. I keep going back to them. I read them. I pray into them. But you'll find themes and concepts starting to come through in every single one of them. So there's probably, again, there's no point doing an exercise now because many of you won't have your prophetic words, but you can go away, have a look at that, what resonates with you. And even this afternoon, as you get prophesied over, obviously record it and go and type it up and start reading through it. Obviously, you need to give discernment to the prophetic word that you have. If you haven't had a prophetic word before, it can be different the first time. But, I mean, I've had prophetic words before, literally, where some guy came up and he put a hand on me and said, like, I'm kind of paraphrasing a bit here, but he said, you know, I just prophesy over you that, you know, I can see you going to church on Sunday. Okay, thanks. Okay, sometimes you get a prophetic word that's so generic, or you just go, okay, and you just do whatever with those, all right? So, so look at the themes and concepts coming through. All right, now let's get on to the next 2 areas, which I think are the most 2 critical areas of confirming your assignment, all right? Giftings and life training, all right? Your natural giftings and your life training. This is so powerful. This is what confirmed it in me. So have a look at David. After David was prophesied over, okay? So he's intimate with the Lord, he was prophesied over. He didn't go straight into his prophecy, okay? He went back into the wilderness. He was back in the wilderness, all right? Being chased by Saul, all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Now, you could say, if he was in the wilderness, he would feel things like insignificance and boredom and discouragement, all those things that we can feel in the wilderness. But what was God doing? God was preparing David in the wilderness, in the pasture. He was preparing him for the palace. That's what he was doing. How was he doing it? In 2 significant ways. Developing his natural giftings and his life training to form his assignment as king of Israel. That's what he was doing in the wilderness, all right? So you know the story of David. What did he do in the wilderness? Obviously, he was looking after his sheep. But what were some of the giftings that he had? Worship, yeah, absolutely. What else? What did he do in the wilderness? Yeah, leadership. Yep. Patience. What are some of the physical things he did? Yeah, killed a bear and a lion. Yep. What else? Yeah, he was looking after the sheep, so tending to the sheep. There's a couple of other things that he did, he was doing in the wilderness.
Building his compassion.
Yeah, building his compassion. What else?
Building trust in God.
Trust in God. What were some of the skills he developed? Slingshot. Right? So sitting there every day. It wasn't actually a slingshot as we know it like that. It was one of those ones that you put a rock in and you swing around your head. So he was practicing the slingshot. You think to yourself, what's that got to do with being king of Israel? True? What else did he do? What did he play and learn in the wilderness? The harp. So what was the harp used for? To placate Saul, right? So in the wilderness, he's developing these giftings and these life trainings that were forming and coming together to form his assignment as king of Israel. Yeah? So it wasn't just he was there looking after the sheep and he thought one day I'll have proper training to be king. God was honing his skills for his assignment. This is what we don't understand in our culture. We think, and maybe some of you think this now, maybe you think I'm in a dead-end job. Maybe you think I'm just doing this stuff at home, or I'm doing this study, or I'm doing this or that. But you don't realise that God is actually honing those skills and that life training to form part of your assignment, both in the negative and the positive. Some of you have gone through really negative stuff in your life. Have you ever sat down and analysed that to think that maybe that could form part of your assignment? All right, your life training. Simone's going to share about what she went through, some really bad experiences, but it's formed part of her life assignment. Think about the injustices and other things that you go through. So when you look at this, King of Israel, you look at the giftings he had. Musician, slingshot, we talked about that. He was like a warrior. He was prudent in speech, and he was a writer. Is it fair to say a lot of those things you need as a king? Life training, tended the sheep. He fought bears, lions, we know that. He placated Saul, okay, with the harp that he learned in the wilderness, and he defeated Goliath. So you see that. Think about Moses. All right, Moses went to the burning bush. Not to the burning bush, but God spoke through the burning bush. Why did God choose Moses? Think about this carefully. Why did he choose Moses, do you think? What was his past experience or life training? Where did he grow up? In Egypt, where? In the palace. Where was God asking him to go? Back to the palace. So his life training was coming into play for his assignment of bringing the people out of Egypt. What was he natural at? He was a natural leader. So having the gifting of a leader and the past experience or life training of growing up in the palace came together to form his assignment, okay, of bringing the people out of Egypt. Every single one of you in the room right now, you have natural giftings and life training that get formed together to create and execute your assignment, all right? It's very important to understand this. Think about David. He was dropping lunch off to the boys when this 9-foot lump of a bloke was standing there, right? And he just had this confidence. Why did he have the confidence? He had confidence because he had such intimacy with the Lord, number one. And number two, his giftings, when I say gifting, his natural skills in using the slingshot just came into play. He thought, I can take out this guy. True? And that was one of the most strategic things that actually positioned him to be king of Israel. The notoriety that came from that was incredible. You could be just dropping lunch off to someone and then that could happen to you. The most ordinary situation can be transformed into your assignment, all right? But you got to think about your natural giftings and your life training. Because what most people tend to do is they waste their wilderness experience. They waste their pastor experience. And I see this all the time. People say to me, David, I'm just in this dead-end job and I'm paying bills every week. And I go, but what is God developing in you right now? Because it won't be wasted. And you'll hear from testimonies today from Simone and myself even further what God did with our life skills and training. You look at Dave Hodgson, okay? His assignment is to create sheep nations. So His natural giftings, entrepreneur, teacher and leader, all right? He does that naturally. And you'll hear his full testimony a bit later after lunch. But he had a lot of adversity growing up, and physically, he's very physical. He was chosen for the Olympics. He's a high achiever. Went from pit experience to multimillionaire. So all of those things come together to give him the character attributes and the giftings and the strength to actually create sheep nations. All right? So it's really important that you understand that God uses these things for you as individuals to create your assignment. All right? So we're going to do an exercise now. Simone, if you can hand out those sheets. This is on the sheets that we're handing out. So have a think about, what are your natural giftings? What comes easy to you? Right? There'll be certain things that you have that come easier to you than the person next to you. Are you naturally geared to people or systems? You know, some people here might prefer sitting behind computers and dealing with people. That's another key. Your spiritual giftings. And I've got some examples there of type of giftings, but that's only a short list. There's many more. But just start to have a serious think about your natural giftings, all right? What has God naturally given you? What comes naturally to you? All right. Has anyone got any questions in relation to giftings? Or skills, I call it, skills or giftings. Any questions on that?
So is it...
Sorry, yeah?
Is it always something that you enjoy?
Well, that's a good question. The question is it always something you enjoy? Right? And the answer is not necessarily. This is... So we assume that it has to be something we enjoy, but, you know, you look at the men of the Bible, did Moses, theologians believe that Moses actually had a high-pitched voice. Can you imagine him, come on everybody, let's leave Egypt? You know what I mean? Like, that's probably why he objected to God about, hey, I can't speak. You know, he had a speech impediment. So, no one picked up on that. So there's things, I believe, and you look through the Bible, there's things where they didn't want to do it, but God was calling them to it. And I think sometimes it can be a labour before it becomes a love. I'll share my full testimony later. I kept on being put into positions of public speaking from a young age, and I hated it. I would have sickies, I quit jobs, I resigned from job, and then I'd go to the next job and people go, I want you to speak, I'd resign and go to the next one. Because I hated it, but eventually I succumbed to it and said, okay, I'll learn, to speak without shaking and dying. So sometimes it's a skill or an attribute that's not necessarily enjoyable to you now. It might be dormant and God might be bringing something out in you. So I say that because you might be good at things, you may not enjoy that, but God might want you to use that skill or attribute. What was the other question?
Yeah, what about when your giftings are in development? For example, I was thinking, well, with younger people. What would you say, how does God assign younger people that maybe the gifts are in development?
When you say development of people?
No, developing these gifts. Like they're still developing and discovering their gifts.
Oh, as a young person?
Yeah, how does God assign people that? How does it assign to actually young people that are still?
Well, I can relate to that because I'm quite young, so I still don't get why you laugh at that. It's just strange to me. So what he does, I believe. I mean, look at the men and women of the Bible. They were called at certain times, and sometimes God just look at Abraham. I mean, Abraham wasn't young, but he was just called to leave and go. He wasn't given any more detail than that. And what we're finding with people's assignments in people that we work with and coach with, that quite often God would just reveal a bit of your assignment. So if you're young, like I've got, my son is 11 years old. His name's Solomon. My name's David, so that works. I've got him at home building our temple, so it's going well. So he has a gifting. I already see his gifting. Like, he's only 11, but he just, people are drawn to him. Like, he can just walk into a room and all these kids just sort of run to him. He's done nothing. There's something on him already. I was in Africa last November preaching over there. We're doing a crusade. And I'm walking back from the hotel to go to the crusade ground, and my little boy looks up at me, and I'm wearing a suit, and he goes, "Dad, I want a suit like yours." I said, "Why do you want a suit like mine?" He goes, "I think I want to preach like you." Oh, that's an awe moment. That's a minty moment. And I said, "That's so cute, son." Now, you got to understand, he's 11, right? And he has a fear of standing in front of people. Like, like an overt fear. It's a real fear. It's not like a pretend fear, like he's like petrified. So we get to the crusade ground. I said to him just before I was introduced, I said, "Do you want to come up and preach?" And he goes, "Yes." So he's 11. And once they preach, he didn't prepare a whole sermon or anything like that. And he just got up and he said, with the interpreter, he said, "I've got a message for everyone there." There's thousands of people there. And he said, "I've got a message for everyone that's here today." And he said, "This message is the following." And he said, "Jesus loves you." Oh, isn't that beautiful? I was so proud. But there it was, like, to answer your question, I just know something's on his life. I don't know the bigger picture, but I'm seeing it in young people all the time. You just see the snippet of what God's doing in him. So he's naturally good with people. He's quite a smart kid, but he just gravitates to people. And that's a gifting, like being good with people. You know, just being able to communicate and liaise with people. And people like that move into roles where it's people orientated, whether it's pastor or in a business, in sales or whatever. People that like systems are more so, you know, coders or programmers or maybe a scientist, you know, they're more like that data. You know, you'll find that you'll gravitate to those areas. The other thing I want to point out too, sometimes when we go through this exercise, it can create discouragement in people too. Because you look through that and you go, "Well, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that." And the enemy can start getting in your head and convincing you of something that's not true. Every single person in this room has skills, attributes that God can use. Okay? You got to understand, even for myself, I doubted. Like, if I did this exercise some time ago, I would just sit there going, "God, I've got nothing. Why would God use me?" You know? And not to have my own pity party, but just the fact that I didn't believe I had anything to give. But it's funny what happens when you start to really ask the Lord and the Holy Spirit what he's given you, because he starts to reveal it to you. This may be very new to you. You've just done a 5-minute exercise, okay? But God can start revealing stuff to you, all right? You know, Simone, for example, she went through, you'll hear her testimony, she went through stuff, "Who am I? Would God ever use me?" Blah, blah, blah. But she's a good listener. She's an incredible listener. And when we used to first go out on dates, I'd be sitting there and I'd be talking to her and I would say, blah, 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 and she'd be like this. I'm like, does she like me? Like, that's her response. She's just staring. And she later told me, I thought she wasn't interested in me, right? And she later told me that when I speak, that she's listening so intently that she's actually making a movie in her head about what I'm speaking about, and she's running that movie whilst she's staring at me. And that's why she had to finish the little movie before she actually responds. I just wish she had told me up front. It would have been a lot smoother. So it's funny now that what she does in her work is all around listening. Okay? And she, once upon a time, she'll share with you, she didn't think she had anything to offer for the kingdom, but now God's taken her all around the world. And what was the one gift? Listening. You don't need 50 of these. It only has to be 1, 2, 3, all right? To encourage you with it. All right, any other questions before we shoot off to lunch?
The movie she was running in her head, was it a Mr. Bean movie? Or
She didn't have to run the movie, she was living it.